Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of Divots and Skins. My name's Jake, and I'm here with Brett. And we're here today to talk to you about how we've been golfing. So why don't you share? It's been a little while since our first episode.
It has. I've had one good round sandwiched amongst a bunch of bad ones. Shot an 82 at our home course, followed it up with some low 90s. We're both learning the course at a very slow rate, I would say at this point. But we're getting in the rounds, putting in the rounds. I don't know if I'll quite cap the 184 rounds that I did last year, but I think we're still going to be up there in the mid 100s probably by the time the year's all said and done.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We moved from a previous course that we had been members at for several years and decided to try a new course this year. We'll share the course. It's Brookhaven in Greenfield, New York, just outside of Saratoga Springs. And part of the reason we chose Brookhaven was because of the challenge of that course. Mm-hmm. It is not an easy course, and we are definitely finding that out. We're finding out that you're not using a driver on every hole. And I know that's something that you were concerned about, but let people know, like, what has that done to your game?
It's kind of force-fed me the mindset that I have to learn how to hit my hybrids and my long irons, 4-iron specifically for me, 5-iron both, is something I didn't have to pull out a lot at our old course. It played a little on the shorter side. I'm a above average ball driver on a good day. I'm going to hit beyond most amateur averages. Our old course played short. This one, because of the high number of dog legs, obviously you can't just hit them as far as you want, because if you hit them through the dog leg, you're in the woods, and that's where this course tends to, bite you in the rear end more often than not. So I've had to learn to hit 4 and 5. I'm really looking forward to, I'm striping them better and better. Hybrids, not so much. I'm coming down a little too steep on them. There are a lot of things I'd like to do better with them. It's just, range work. I got to get out there and practice it. But, live practice where you're on a course and the threat of danger is there in front of you while you're trying to score is always going to be more important than, range work. But you learn you learn the trade on the driving range, but you perfect it out on the course when you got a little bit of pressure on your back. And so I'm looking forward to those getting better. Right now, that's what's hurting me more than anything else is off the tee box.
Yeah, it's an interesting course when it comes to using a driver. Like you said, you're above average driver for your age and your amateur status. I'm about where I should be as well as the higher handicap. And even I'm finding that there's several holes that I have to be careful I don't drive into the woods. And there are some trees on this course. I'll tell you, it is something that we have talked about several times in the cart. This course will punish you, and that's kind of fun. You can't make the mistakes that you would make on an open course and kind of slice it, push or pull it or whatever, and get into the trees and have an easy punch out. Not on this course. This course will punish you if you get into the trees. And so I think it really has taught me as well, coming off the tee box, to figure out what works for me. And it's funny, I went from a driver that I would use on almost every hole to, all right, I'm going to use my 2 hybrid, to some of them now I'm using my 4-iron. And I'm saying, okay, I'd rather be 20 yards shorter, but in the middle of the fairway and have a great second shot without having to take the chance that I'll run through the fairway into the rough on the other side, or even beyond that into the trees. So funny story is the first day of this season that I went to play there, I think I hit every tree. At least every tree on the first hole. At least that's what it felt like. And not only that, but I was playing zigzag golf where I was trying to punching out too far, ending up on the woods on the other side of the fairway, then trying to punch out again. And so this course is fun to play, but it is definitely one that's going to challenge you. And it's going to challenge you because it says, hey, can't use driver all the time. And the long hitters don't necessarily play as well on this course. But we're going to give you a full review of that course coming up in a couple episodes. We want to get some more rounds under our belt. But like you said, you shot a 80-something the other day?
82 is my best so far there this year. And there's definitely even on that, there was some couple holes I'd like to have back. I had a couple double bogeys early, recovered really well on the back. But up down game there is super important because of the slope on the greens. And for me on the day that day, it was really good. I think I saved 6 pars in a row at one point by chipping tight and then knocking in the putt.
So one of the things that I do when I have a membership at a course is I have in my notes app on my iPhone a list of all of the holes. And then I have the par next to the hole number. And then I've got a check mark because when I birdie that hole, I want to check it off. Now, at our previous course, Brett was able to birdie all 18 holes on that course. And that's a pretty cool feat. And when you did that, that's when I started thinking about, hey, I need to keep track of this stuff. And so on my notes app, it's got 1 through 18. It's got a check mark next to each one of those. And then each time I do birdie it, I put an X next to the par to basically tell myself how many times did I birdie that hole in that season. And I basically copy and paste that every year. I also keep track of what is my best front 9, what is my best back 9, and then obviously what is my best score. But for me, something that I've really, really tried to focus on is getting under 90, because I know the percentage of golfers that get under 90 is very small. And so I had a pretty lofty goal at our previous course because it was wide open. I went into this one and I told you after the first couple of rounds, I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm going to break 90, let alone am I going to have multiple rounds this year under 90. But I'm happy to share that I already hit one. And so I'm super happy about that. And I'm super stoked about that. And I've also already gained 4 birdies. Where do you stand with birdies on this course so far?
I'm either at 4 or 5. I had another one tonight, and that one was a brand new one for me. It was a par 3 that I stuffed in a heavy wind. I was really proud of that. Stuffed it to like 3 feet 11 inches. It was we were in a league there tonight, and they had it closest to the pin on that one. And as of when we left, I was on the leaderboard at 3 feet 11 inches on the tee shot. There's a lot more that can go wrong at that course right now, I think, than can go right at times, just because of the wind factor. Early in the season, your game's not quite as tight as it would be later on. Then on top of that, you add in, the high winds that we typically get up in the mountains in the spring here. That definitely adds, pucker factor that most people don't want to deal with when they're stepping up to a tee box. But tonight, for the most part, I hit the par 3s pretty well. I was pretty happy with it. But again, there's a lot that can go wrong at a course like that. Very sloped greens, folks. Again, when we get into a full review of the course, we'll talk about it. But it's one of those things where, they say 6 inches between your ears is the hardest distance in golf to manage. And that definitely is a course that's going to test every bit of that 6 inches of brain power that you have, because it's not something where you can just step up and automatically grab a club. How you're hitting that particular evening is going to be a big, factor or that particular afternoon it's going to factor in how you're hitting. Are you hitting them flush that day? Are you hitting them a little thin? Are you hitting them higher than normal? The wind's going to be a big factor there. There's a lot of stuff that comes into play, and that's all, part of the fun of golf. It's a big Rubik's Cube. It's what I tell Jake. He goes nuts sometimes because he doesn't understand how he can hit a ball so well one shot, and then the next shot, he'll hit it poorly. And I keep telling him, I said, it's just one big Rubik's Cube. You just got to try to line up everything in the same day at the same time. Not an easy thing to do, which is why very few people break 90.
Yeah. And so I did have a chip in birdie this year, and I was super ecstatic about that. You were standing over the hole. I chipped it about 3 feet to the left and made that turn. And I couldn't really tell from when it was turning if it was getting close enough to the hole to actually go in. But we laughed because I think I maybe had 1 rotation left on that ball, but it went in, and that's what matters. And that was, I want to say that's probably my first ever chip in birdie, but I'm not 100% sure.
It's the only one I can remember, and I've been golfing with you now for 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it's been, and I can't remember you ever having a chip in birdie. I've seen you do a couple chip in pars, but never a chip in birdie. So, and that was a particularly tough one because, for those who are in the know about golf, you don't want to short side yourself. Meaning, if you're going to miss on a green, on your approach to the green, don't miss on the side that gives you no room to chip. Jake did exactly opposite that. Jake missed on the side where I think he had maybe 2 to 3 yards from the edge of the rough onto the green, and he had a big mound in front of his way of rough. and he was in the rough where he was hitting from, and he hit a beautiful chip and put it, like he said, just uphill of the hole, and it curled around perfectly and dropped in. It was one of those highlights in golf that we all, smile about when we go home at night.
Yeah, and we always say, man, I wish I had filmed that, but you can't hit and film at the same time. It doesn't work. So we're going to jump in early this episode into our rule of the day, because you actually were sharing with me one that you found out about recently right before we were doing this podcast. So why don't you tell people what that rule of the day is?
This is a rule that the USGA and the RNA, which for those who aren't familiar, that's the Royal and Ancient Golf Association. It's essentially Scotland, Ireland. It's what the European, amateurs play by. It's the rule book they play by. It's in most ways, it's very tightly aligned with what we have here in the States as USGA players. For those who aren't in the know, it's U.S. Golf Amateurs or U.S. Golf Association. I can't remember which one it is. I always forget. But regardless, it's what us amateurs play by. The rule is a little complex. It starts out very simple in that you can remove your ball if it's trapped in its own pitch mark. So that would mean if you have a wet area on the course, you hit and it essentially plugs, and or you hit, the ball bounces forward and then spins back and lands in that divot that it made on the fairway and or rough. Now the rough part, they just expanded that rule a short while ago. I believe it was a year or two ago. They expanded it to include the rough. It used to only include the fairway. Now essentially anywhere on the course other than a sand bunker, you can use that rule to your effect. Now there are a couple little bylaws to it. One is that you can pick up your ball and clean it only. You're allowed to take a club length drop, no closer to the hole. All drops in golf, just for those again who don't know, all drops in golf are no closer to the hole drops. You can't give yourself any kind of advantage by dropping closer. You can move further away laterally, you can move further away backwards, but you can't move closer to the hole ever. So you are allowed to pick up and identify your ball and put it down within one club length. Now, to identify your ball, you can clean off enough of the ball to identify that it is your ball, but you cannot clean the entire ball. So that's a kind of a shady rule, I guess, for lack of a better term, because obviously some guys are going to say, well, geez, I was looking all over the ball for my dot that I put on it or whatever, and that's why I had to clean the whole thing. Most people aren't going to call you on it. I'm not a stickler for that one, even when we're on tour. If as far as watching other people, I don't care if they clean off their whole ball. I think it's a rule that should be amended to say you can clean off your whole ball. Soft course conditions sometimes just require it. You shouldn't have to play mud balls. Even the PGA Tour players now play preferred lies after rainstorms and stuff like that. I don't think us as amateurs should have to play under worse conditions than they do. The other thing you can't do is if that pitch mark that you landed in put you in a disadvantageous position, like behind a bush, for instance, you are not allowed to take a drop in that case. You have to leave it where it is and play it as though it were any other place on the course and it wasn't in its own pitch mark. So that's a little rule that you can use to your advantage. And again, because they expanded it into being able to hit it out of rough areas and even a hard pan area, if you happen to catch a wet spot that in a really wide section of course that's hard pan, you're allowed to pull it out, put it in a better position, hit from there. The reason they did this, just so everybody's aware, is for faster pace of play. Faster pace of play is something you're going to hear me talk about a lot. I'm a very fast golfer. I don't take a lot of practice swings. Well, let me rephrase. I don't take practice swings other than putting, and that's very infrequent even for putting. I find that it just keeps me in a better rhythm to just mentally just step up and hit so that I'm not overthinking. But that's why they did it, pace of play. And everybody, I think pace of play should be important to everybody.
Yeah, I think in the future, one of the things that we'll talk about are some of the annoyances we have playing on public courses and some of the things that we'd like to see people consider when they are playing. And pace of play is definitely one of them. So it's great to see this kind of rule be kind of updated so that it can really encourage that good pace of play. Now, I did want to go back to the rule we talked about in episode 1, where we were talking about how you can play your ball when you are in a red or yellow staked area. And we talked about whether you could move the stake. So what did you find out about that we were going to come back and talk about?
Well, originally my thought was always what I had heard from other amateur players on tour was that you could remove a stake if it was impeding your swing, with the exception of a white stake. Well, after doing some deep digging, including in my USGA rules app that I have on my phone, which is not always the most terribly affording of finding the information quickly. Sometimes it requires some deep digging, but come to find out, you cannot remove stakes if they're impeding your swing. Your choices are to play it as it lies as one, or to take an unplayable lie, just like you would if you were directly behind the trunk of a tree or something like that. Take the 1-stroke penalty, move the ball no closer to the hole, and take your 1 club length drop.
Well, that's good to know. And I think a lot of people do, unfortunately, remove stakes when they're close to them or they are within their impeding their swing or whatever. And I think, again, as amateurs, you just have to figure out what you want to do for rules and stuff among your friends. But I know on tour, it's really good that we know that, because that's an important rule to really know. So I'm glad we could give you that update to that rule. Next up, I want to talk about something really interesting that was announced this week. So Grant and the Bryan Bros are YouTube golfers. They're not professionals. They're still amateurs, but they film everything they do when it comes to golf. They film one-on-one things they do. They film bigger stuff that they do with tournaments and things like that. They do a lot of collaborations with other YouTubers. They are YouTube golfers. But the way I look at them is they are at the high level of the YouTube golfers. They are getting millions of views on their videos. They're making a lot of money off of YouTube, and they have sponsorships and things like that. Well, they made an announcement this week that was really interesting. They have decided to develop their own tour, and it is called the Your Golf Tour, or YGT. Basically what they're doing is they have a 16-player roster, and it is made up of YouTube golfers. It's made up of some other golfers that are maybe not as well known on YouTube, that are good skilled. But it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it. Now, they have had creator tournaments. I know Barstool had a huge one last year that was just absolutely crazy film-wise. They had many, many, many cameras. But one of the things I think that makes YouTube work is personalities and characters and drama and the storylines and stuff like that. And the Barstool tournament had all of that. It had all of the drama, it had all of the storylines, it had all the personalities, and that's what made that really, really good. What I find interesting with YGT is that it seems to be more focused on skills. Now, they announced a list of golfers. I'll put a link to their announcement in our show notes, but I know maybe half of them. And the half that I know is because I know them because of their personalities on YouTube. The other thing that I'm a little concerned about is what the heck they're talking about when it comes to the format. I listened to their YouTube press release. I've read articles, and I can sit here and tell you I still have no idea what's going on when it comes to their tournaments. So I know they're doing multiple locations. They're starting in Alabama. I have it pulled up here. It's called Purcell Farms. They're going to start there. And I don't quite understand how they're doing it, but they're going to have a draft. So there's 4 captains, and they're going to have a draft out of the 16 players to figure out who's going to be on whose team. Now, they went into some stuff about somebody can get cut, that they would have to possibly cut them after the first tournament, and then they could possibly bring them back. And then they talked about a wild card player who could basically be anybody. It could be a pro, it could be a semi-pro. And so there's all of these crazy rules, and I don't understand it. and I'm going to have to read more about it. And like I said, I will put links to articles and their video in the show, so hopefully you guys can understand it better. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on these big YouTubers trying to do these tours or these events that are rather massive and money-wise can become very financially lucrative for them and whoever is involved?
All right, maybe I should preface this with a breaking news for Jake. This is something Jake and I have not discussed at length, but I'm going to give my little 2 cents here because that's what we're here for. I despise anybody who disrupts other people on the golf course. Now, in this particular format that they're doing, they're probably going to shut down golf courses, have them go out, or half a day they'll shut it down or whatever, and have this group of 16 players plus all of the entourage that they're going to have, the media and everybody else. It's the cameras that are going to be following them around. I had a particular instance that led me to have my own personal viewpoint on it. There was a person that was running promos, and he started doing content from inside of his golf cart. That's a big no-no to me. The person that was in the cart with him was getting very upset because he was driving right by his ball. He wasn't bringing him to his ball because he was too hung up in making notes, audio notes on his phone and making phone calls and the such. I'm a firm believer that it's always been, an honest man's respectful, dignified game, and I think it should be kept that way. I don't think the game should be turned into a circus. Again, I didn't get distracted by the person who was doing this, even though he was in my foursome. I heard the complaints from the guy he was playing with, and then he told me his side of it, that he needs to do this because otherwise he won't have the content that he needs. My problem is what you're trying to do as a little side hustle or whatever should not disrupt everybody else having a good time on the golf course. And especially, yes, it's just an amateur golf tour, but guys take great pride in being able to walk into the clubhouse and say they were a winner or, top 3 or whatever it was, and they placed in the money. Guys don't want to be disrupted from their normal routine. They want to feel like a pro when they're out there. But I personally don't get distracted. I've said before that you could run a chainsaw next to my head. It's not going to disrupt my golf game. I have a shot in front of me and I'm like hyper focused, maybe to my detriment at times, but I don't get distracted easily or hardly at all. I can understand completely how some players do. I don't feel this way just about content creators, for lack of a better term. I don't feel it just about them. I feel that way about loud music. I feel that way about smoking, about marijuana on the course. I feel that way about drinking on the course. Yes, Jake and I enjoy a beer or two on the course, but I will tell you flat out that if Jake was smoking a cigarette in my face, that would bother me when we were in the cart, and it would disrupt me having as good a time as I could have. And we've both golfed with smokers before, and you have to find a way to be civil about it. Again, it's a gentleman's game, and you should approach the person and tell them, hey, that's disruptive to me. That would have been the right way for this guy to handle it. Instead of belly aching to me, he should have talked to this content creator and said, hey, what you're doing is not right. It's really getting me off my game. Could you stop doing it? That's the gentlemanly way to handle it. All this other circus that's going on around, guys running around with cameras on a course while you're out trying to play. I've heard some nightmare stories about people getting caught behind them where, they're doing 25 to 30 minutes per hole, which is outlandish. And if you get stuck behind somebody like that, it's obviously going to diminish your pleasure in being out on the golf course. So that's my big issue.
I have to agree with you that I think, and this is where people like Grant and the Brian Bros and some of these bigger channels have realized they can't do that. They can't go to a normal course. They can't go to a public course and record their 1v1 and be disruptive. So what they end up doing is they end up shutting courses down. So, for example, the Barstool competition, that shut down that entire course for an entire weekend. And that costs a lot of money. And obviously there's sponsorships and stuff like that. I think these guys are doing the same thing. They're working with the Wynn Casino, who had approached them with an idea of putting on a big content event at their golf course. And they took that and said, okay, we want to build something bigger. We want to do a tour. And so they are doing multiple stops. And I feel like they're shutting those stops down for the day or for the weekend or whatever they're going to end up doing. And so you won't get into that much of disruption. My concern, and it's a concern of several people that I've read that have written about this, is when it comes to YouTube golfing, it's about personalities. But when you're putting hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, which they are, including $1 million purse for the finals, is that going to change what those personalities are like? Is it going to change and make it less interesting because now we're watching for skill more than we're watching for entertainment? Now, all the more power to them. This is their first year. Who knows what this is going to turn into or what this is going to look like. But my concern is, as YouTube golfers and YouTube content creators, they need to be very careful that this does not become a money grab. If this becomes a money grab for these guys, people are not going to tune in, because that's not what they want to see. They want to see the antics, the fun, but they do want to see the skills too. And I think these guys particularly do a great job of that when they do their 1 versus 1 or breaking 50 or the things that they do. They bring the entertainment as well as the really great golf shots. The other thing I'm concerned about is I saw what it took to produce the Barstool competition. Like I said, many, many, many cameras and many, many, many lavalier mics. Are they going to be able to sustain that kind of production level and keep it interesting and keep it entertaining? We'll have to wait and see.
I have a side thought about that, Jake. For anybody who's watched a significant amount of golf, they know about the LIV Tour. The LIV Tour essentially split off from the PGA, and it was essentially a cash grab. The Saudis, they decided to throw a huge, amount of money towards star golfers to see if they would jump ship from the PGA and go to a no-cut tournament. They have a limited number of players over there. Everybody gets paid and nobody gets cut. So obviously it was a cash grab. It was also, I understood, for lifestyle reasons. Those tournaments up until this year, they did 3 rounds versus 4. So rather, that gave them an extra day with their families. I understand that, from a work-life balance, that was better for some of the star players. But there are a great number of them that obviously jumped ship. It was very clear they jumped ship for one thing and one thing only, and that was the cash bag that was being waved in front of their faces. For all practical purposes, the LIV Golf Tour has crashed and burned. They've had players come back to the stakes. Brooks Koepka is the biggest name of all of them, a many-time major winner. He's left the LIV Tour, applied to come back to the PGA, and he got accepted with some stipulations because they're not just going to let everybody just come back and jump into the mix, because there's a lot of young up-and-comers who could get potentially bumped out of playing conditions if they let everybody from the LIV Tour just jump back ship over to PGA. So they've already tried this, and I know it's not, influencers are different than professional golfers, but where I find that they're going to have a hard time differentiating is because they are throwing a pretty big prize pool at these amateur players. If you're going to watch somebody, golf and play like us, obviously they're much better golfers than us. But is it going to become the Survivor or Big Brother or any of the other reality shows that you see and sprinkled in with golf? Or is it going to be focused on golf with just worse golfers than you see on either the LIV or the PGA Tour? I think that's where they're going to have a hard time. They're going to have to find that line in there somewhere. And I also want to make a very quick, small note about something. You were talking about they're not going to disrupt, courses and blah, blah, blah. They're going to shut them down. I agree that this tour won't do that. The problem is the people that are playing on this tour, most of them, I would think, part of their job description, they would call themselves what? Influencers. Just like professional athletes influencing young children, influencers on social media are going to influence other golfers. So now maybe they're not going to disrupt things at their course, but now if you have a bunch of knucklehead 23-year-olds out there that say, hey, I want to start taping all of our rounds, and they're stopping so that they can set up this and set up that and put on their mics or take off their mics or whatever it is, it's going to disrupt their home courses or the places they're playing at. And I think there's at some point, I think you're going to have to see someone come in and say, and it's going to probably be at a course by course basis. Hey guys, we don't allow cameras on the course, or we don't allow microphones, or whatever it is, to keep people moving. On a very quick mention of my wife and I while we were at Nationals last year in South Carolina, we ran into Georgia. We wanted to pick off an extra state, so we ran into Georgia, golfed around there, and we had a group of ladies playing in front of us that were taking pictures of everything. And that's another one of those things. Again, I understand, this was right near an airport. I really don't understand, like they had never seen an airplane. That's a lot of what they were taking pictures of, is the airplanes going overhead after coming off the runways. But it was very disruptive to the flow of our golf game. It took us almost 6 hours to get through an 18-hole round that day because of that. The course owner or whoever was at the pro shop that day actually apologized for having taken so long. There was a communication barrier, needless to say, between him and the ladies that were, had come in and paid for their round. I'm not trying to take any joy from anybody else having a good round, but if your joy disrupts everybody else's, it's time to tone it back a little bit and find a happy medium.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the courses need to keep an eye on things. They need to not only keep an eye on things for pace of play and things like that, but behaviors and what people are doing on the course. And I think it's really important that you don't disrupt things. I mean, I love YouTube golf. I think it's an interesting thing that's happening. I like watching some of the videos and stuff, but I know what I'm watching is not that style. Like, I'm not watching the kid who is... I don't like the things where somebody disrupts somebody trying to drive or somebody trying to putt, and they're doing these pranks and things like that. No, I want to see people like Grant and the Bryan Bros play against other players and show me, like, okay, what did they score? Like, what do their shots look like? And have fun with it and have cool conversations. I don't want them to do the stupid antics and all of that stuff. So there's part of me with this new tour that wants it to be more on the skill side, but I just don't think you can do something on YouTube without the personality side. And so it's going to be a really interesting thing to see what happens with this and what the mix is. Obviously, it's a big announcement for them. It's a lot of content for them. I know one of the things that's interesting is that part of the tour is going to be on one person's channel, and then the next part will be on a different person's channel, and then the finals will be on the YGT channel. So I could see where they're being smart YouTube business people, and they're realizing that if they can put the views on certain people's channels, they can make money that way. There's no question that this isn't something that has to, like, it clearly has to do with them getting more eyeballs on themselves and on golf and on YouTube golf. I just hope, for their sake, that it doesn't become boring and it doesn't become just repetitive and not enjoyable. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's a big announcement. It's a big money thing. And obviously the win being behind it, that casino and that family and that's a lot of money behind it. So we'll see what these guys do. Could it end up being like Live? Who knows? Now, do I think it could give people opportunity to maybe shine and get known and be found out to possibly go to the PGA? Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with that.
I would love, I'm looking directly at you, Grant. I would love you to give me a shout out, give me a call, and explain to me how what you're doing is not going to be detrimental down the line as far as the trickle down, like I just talked about, to younger influencers or wannabe influencers. To them, are you putting a label on your product saying don't try this at home? Because otherwise I think it's going to be tried at home. And I think as far as bettering the game of golf, I think it's going to make it worse until courses have to step in. And I don't think the impetus should always be on the courses to have to keep reining people back. At some point, Grant and the brothers and everybody else, I think it's up to you guys to say, hey guys, we do this under a controlled environment. Don't run around and doing this at home. I know I'm a podcaster. Jake's a podcaster. This is my first delve into it, but I'm just giving my 2 cents. I would love to hear from someone in the upper echelon of that tour to explain to me so that I could explain to our world up here about how this, is beneficial to the game of golf. Because ultimately, if you truly love golf, what you do in and around your sphere, whether it's, YouTube or any other, social media outlet you use, I think it should be for the betterment of golf.
I agree. I think that it would be interesting to hear, and I'm sure we will, because obviously they're going to be talking about this up until it actually happens. I'm interested to follow it and see what it is going to be, what it is going to be like, and what's going to happen with it. I think your comparison to Live is really interesting. There's a lot of people that are upset about the amount of money and where that money was coming from. And some people may be upset about this too, because it's coming from casinos, it's coming from large industry. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I found it really bizarre in some ways that it came out the way that it did. It's not really a long tour, so I still feel like that's a rather strange way of putting it, because it's only a couple different stops. And realistically, to me, it feels like it's just a big tournament for Wynn to show off their golf course and get their name out there. So we'll see. Just thought I would share that this announcement happened, and we'd share our opinion on what we think about that kind of golf. Again, I like watching it, but I also don't like it disrupting things. So it's kind of something I have to keep my eye on. And luckily, we don't see much of it around here. We don't see a bunch of kids running around and filming stuff and doing those kinds of things. But I can only imagine if you are on your home course and you see this, it has to be annoying.
My biggest point as far as Live being a failed product, and I'm not here to bash Live, that's not my intent, it's just give my honest opinion. My biggest ammo that I got in my ammo case, I guess, would be that Live's biggest sponsor, which was essentially a country, the Saudis, they took their financial backing away. So they're financing them through the end of the year, and then they're done. That shows the product is diminished greatly, that they way overpaid these guys. The purses were way too big. The not having any cuts was a bad idea. And the spectacle around it, they wanted to make it a looser. You can wear shorts on the Live Tour. You don't have to wear pants. They played loud music at every turn. Not just the clubhouse, but they have a bunch of other locations, satellite locations out on the course. They have a team format within the individual format. Just a lot of quirky stuff that they tried. And I'm all about, I'm fine with them trying it. Again, I think it was a cash grab for most of the guys that joined it. But it's been a really poor product to watch. It's very confusing. Their leaderboard that they show, it's because not everybody starts on the same hole. That's the other thing. They don't start on hole 1, or in some cases, some tournaments will start you on hole 10 too. But this course starts like a shotgun start, like you would do a scramble. So any of the 18 holes, they'll start you on. So you can't tell, how many holes does the leader have left, because you don't know what hole he started on. So it becomes a very confusing thing, and they put that up on the board. Your team score is right below it with the individual scores, and it's tough to follow. Like, you see numbers jumping all over, because every time somebody from that team has a birdie or an eagle or whatever, you'll see the score change, or a bogey, double bogey, same thing. Just very confusing format. And again, I think when you play the loud music and just say everybody's got to deal with it because that's part of this tour, yes, it's buyer beware. I understand that people are signing on to this, knowing full well that could happen. But my problem with it is now you're taking away from the gentlemanly part of the game, which is, it was a very peaceful, quiet, understated walk in the woods, as they used to say.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of this year with Live. That's another one that I'm keeping an eye on. I don't watch it. I watched maybe 1 or 2 tournaments, and I agree it was extremely confusing. It was very odd, and I'm concerned that YGT is going to be the same thing, because, like I said, the format that they're playing in, the team aspect and this wild card person and that kind of stuff just feels like we're trying to take a sport that clearly works and try to modernize it in ways that don't need to be done. And so we'll see what happens. Obviously, like I said, the links will be in the description so you can watch their announcement, read a couple of the articles that are there, and form your own opinion. But I'll be watching to see what happens, but I'm also probably going to be extremely confused when I'm watching because I'm confused and I've read several articles on it. So I don't know. Well, I think we're going to close up there. And as always, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn the notification bell on so that you can get notified when we upload our latest video to YouTube. You can also find us on any podcast app that you go to, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, and you can go to our website, divotsandskins.com, to find the links to those podcast apps as well as the YouTube link. And remember,
Never leave a birdie putt short.